Welcome back to the February edition of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. And we have a treat for you because Paul Schulte is here, and Paul's going to talk to us an awful lot about the Record, our Catholic newspaper for the Archdiocese of Louisville, and the readership. So Paul, welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Archbishop.
Let me tell people a little bit about your back. First of all, you're a native of St. Louis.
I am.
But my gosh, you've been here in Louisville forever. So
I did.
We're very grateful. I know that you met your wife Sue at Bellarmine.
I did.
And have been here since then. And you founded HorizonInsight, which is a research and a marketing firm. We've benefited by your professional research. And I know that it says here that you're semi-retired, but the way you work, it's hard for me to believe that's the case. I know that you and Sue are members of Ascension Parish, and also that you have 2 grown children.
We do.
So what shocked me was the fact that the first readership survey that you did concerning the Record was in 1984. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that you've just completed late last year the 5th of your research on the readership of the Record.
It's clearly the longest sort of consistent piece of research that we've done, either I've done personally or through the company.
Your mind is a gold mine, so we want to be able to benefit from that. First of all, tell us, over that span of, I guess, 35 years, what's changed and what's stayed the same with the Record? I think most people who are viewing here understand that the Record is our archdiocesan newspaper that comes out weekly. Right. But what has changed? What's remained the same?
Well, I think what's remained the same, Archbishop, is that the Catholics of Central Kentucky read this newspaper, they respect this newspaper, and they appreciate what it does for them personally, and for the communication needs of the Archdiocese. They connect with it. They always have. I kept waiting over these years for that to change. Just simply because you know how media has changed.
The printed media.
The printed media
has
been in trauma, and yet this publication continues to serve the Catholics, I think, primarily because they want to know about people they know. Okay, and we all talk about how few degrees of separation there is in our Catholic community, and so reading something about St. Martha and being all the way across town, you probably know 4 or 5 people there. You've known people over the years.
You've gone to their mass and certainly to their fish fry.
Fish fry, exactly.
Exactly.
And so you want to know what's going on there. You want to know what's going on at the broader research.
So what has changed? Because obviously in 35 years with the print media, there's been so much change. What's changed for our readership?
Our readers read differently, and by that I mean that if you kind of think about back in the day, you might have settled into the couch and got out your newspaper and settled in for 15 minutes. We don't do that anymore. We process things in a different way, even mentally, as we've gone through the technological age. So now we only spend about 10 to 15 minutes with it, maybe a little bit less than that.
The average time has been condensed.
And whether or not it's, one wonders though if there isn't as much processing going on as was going back in the relaxed day. But they clearly do that. They probably miss more issues than they did before. Vacations, travel, a busy
we're
week.
A mobile society.
We're a mobile society, and so where most of the people would see all 4 issues, now we may only catch 3. We may miss one. But it's
so tell me this then. Were there any surprises in this 5th review that you just did?
Well, I mean, the first surprise, and we've already talked about it, is that the newspaper has sustained its resiliency, and its resiliency over the years, I think is somewhat a surprise. I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but one of my surprises is how trustworthy people see this we call it a brand, but how trustworthy the newspaper is. And again, that's an attribute that many media of any kind are hard-pressed to have, that oftentimes it's trustworthy as long as it's inside my worldview.
Right, exactly. If it agrees with my thinking.
If it agrees with my thinking. Here we know we have a broad range of people and thoughts, and yet it's very consistent that this is considered trustworthy. And I think that has to do a great deal with your leadership and others in terms of the transparency that we see in the Archdiocese.
Thank you for saying that.
I think that ties in some
And
way.
we got to give kudos to Marnie and the staff and Glenn, who went before her, and of course Joe.
Absolutely.
So we've really been blessed with great leadership at the Record.
We had. Absolutely, for over hundreds a year, actually.
Exactly. We don't have too much time left, but could you give a little thought about maybe strength and weakness? Did anything come through that could help our listeners?
From a strength, I'll mention the trustworthy thing again.
Yes.
I think that's worth it. The other is that this is a monopoly that's both helpful and useful and informative for people. And by
so
that
monopoly
I mean
in the sense it gets sent to you whether you want it or not?
No, the monopoly in the sense there's no other way that you can find out what's going on in the community of Central Kentucky except here. Otherwise, you got to go to 100 different parish websites. You have to call up and find out.
This is a snapshot of 24 counties.
Brings it all together.
And the church and there's civil involvement.
There's no other media shooting out emails to you or apps to you. This is where you got to go. Right. And sometimes monopolies are nice if they're if they're useful.
Well, one of the things that you said when you used the word trustworthy is it puts an appropriate burden on us, doesn't it?
It does.
To be able to live up to that trust.
Exactly.
And I think with so many times we hear people talking about, transparency and is this person leading us in the right way? Are we hearing everything going on? And you were good to say that we have done our best to do that. But I must say that it is kind of a responsibility that we ourselves need to be able to live up to in some fashion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot
How
of
often would you say your work of taking a step back and looking at a snapshot, you've done it, I guess, every 7 or 8 years over the last since 1984.
Right.
Is that about the right way for us to take a step back and look at?
I think so. I think so. It doesn't. We don't have that much dramatic change going on within the document, but I do think that we have to be careful to make sure that we're looking forward. One of the nice things about the record is it's not in trauma or in chaos, which many media allowed themselves to get into, and then the changes they had to make were sometimes not as thoughtful as they should have been. We have the luxury of realizing, though, that things are going to continue to change, that we're going to be challenged by electronics and the young folks. We're going to have to find ways to communicate as we work harder at bringing the young adults back. How we communicate with them is probably not going to be paper, and we're going to have to figure that out.
Well, and as, we've begun at least the process of putting things online,
exactly,
and being able to judge that.
The second one is the responsibility to our Hispanic community.
Yes, and the section,
and how we're going to do
Latino
that.
section.
And that's already started in different ways. But so those are.
Well, Paul, you're like a sentinel for us. You're looking out at the past, at the present, and into the future. And I just have to tell you how grateful we are. It's always a pleasure to work with you, but also to know of the expertise that you bring. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed it very much.
I want to say thank you to those of you who have been viewing or listening to this segment with Paul Schulte to talk about the record. We're grateful that you read the record, and we, of course, always appreciate your feedback. Thank you for being part of this segment of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz, the February edition, and I'd invite you to stay tuned for the third and final segment.